Judge Joe Brown's all-new barbecue sauce and seasoning. Justice in the form of flavor.
Law firms will take this as a retainer.
What? It must be a law firm where they hungry as hell. Now you gonna help me with this parole I'm dealing with?
Judge Joe Brown's all-new barbecue sauce and seasoning. Justice in the form of flavor. With one taste of our premium blends of all-natural ingredients, herbs, and spices, you'll fall in love with meat all over again. Judge Joe Brown's all-natural barbecue sauce collection is made up of 2 zesty flavors, original and spicy. There's only one way to bring order back to barbecuing. Just add Judge Joe Brown's all-natural barbecue sauce and seasoning, and you be the judge.
Oh, hi guys. We supposed to be on our little Christmas break, but this could possibly be somewhat breaking news or new news or, teetering on gossiping and tea. However, this is for right now alleged. And I'm glad the judge is here to make sure we stay in the legal parameters. We've been talking about Fani Willis, Fulton County corruption since January of 2024. And I think it's only fitting for us to end the year talking about Fani Willis. And so, LA Pink, you sent me a text with information about Fani Willis' mother, alleged mother. We have spoke about her father. Her father testified for her earlier this year, but we never heard from, seen, or anybody talk about her mother. Who is Fani Willis' mother, basically? That's what I'm asking. So before I get to you, Judge, LA Pink, is there anything you want to say? Because you're the one who brought this information to me. Unmute.
So it was brought to me as well. And so I had to share it because nobody is talking about it. But however, she had just inquired yeah, it's huge, but nobody is talking about it. So I was like, well, let's talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Because if everybody knows about it, but nobody is saying nothing about it because they don't want to touch upon it. See, the thing about Georgia down here is that and I know you guys have probably noticed, they are scared to do anything. These people hoodwinkled and bamboozled down here to believing that they got more power than God, and I just don't operate like that. I feel like they don't hold no power. Nobody is above the law. That's what they said out of their own mouths. And so I operate in just that regardless. If it's something that needs to be addressed, I want to address it. And God already said this was the year for exposure, and everything is being exposed. I mean, from the judges to the DAs to the district attorneys to well, that is the DA, but to, our Fulton County Sheriff, Clayton County, any kind of sheriff down here, from Clayton County to Cobb County to any county down here in Georgia is being yes. Well, he ain't been on the map yet. He, 10 pounds been laying low. He just been floating. Right. I really haven't got anything. His brother lives across the street from me. So, if there is an issue or a problem, I would address it.
So here's the thing. What are we talking about, right? Well, we're talking about Fani Willis' mother. Who is her mother? And what you brought to me, and I want to share this. So you brought this to my attention. This woman, Sherry Laverne Dalton, is wanted by the FBI. And this is supposedly, allegedly, Fani Willis' mother. Now, the charges is violation of RICO statute, interference with interstate commerce by robbery, obstruction of justice, armed bank robbery, killings, aiding and abetting.
I think it's 3 homicides that are supposed to have occurred during a bank robbery.
Right. So apparently, this person
bank robberies.
This person used 2 date of births, 1950, 1952, a whole bunch of alias. They're saying that the FBI is offering a reward up to $100,000 for information from Cherie Laverne Dalton. Dalton is believed to be living in Cuba. She has ties to Havana, Cuba, St. Croix, Virgin Islands. Cherie Laverne Dalton is wanted for her alleged involvement in the Brinks armored car robbery, which occurred October 21st, 1981 in Nantucket, New York. Nanuet, New York. The robbery resulted in a loss of $1.6 million. The 2 police officers and 1 security guard were killed. 1 police officer and 2 guards were wounded. On November 17, 1982, a federal grand jury operating in the Southern District of New York returned a superseding indictment charging Dalton with violation of RICO statute, interference with interstate commerce by robbery, obstruction of justice, and armed bank robbery killings, and aiding and abetting. Should be considered armed and dangerous, right? So this all took place in the 80s. Now, they're saying, your sources, L.A. Pink is saying, this is Fani Willis' alleged mom. Born in 1952, Fani Willis was born in 1972. Judge, you want to come in and say something about this? Because you knew her father.
I knew her too. I knew her too.
The mother.
Yes.
That woman who I
don't know if it's the one and the same. Last I saw that woman, she was in her early 20s, and that would be somewhere around 1972, 73. 70, 71, 72, 73. Her father was active. Yes, this picture here, that's when she's purportedly pregnant. I know John. We went to school together out in the LA area. We were in Black Student Alliance on and off for about 6, maybe 8 years total. Last I talked to him, he had broken up with her. And this was somewhere around 1979, 1980, 81, somewhere in there. So he was no longer with her. That's John Floyd. He testified during the recent proceedings when we were discussing Mr. Wade, Attorney Wade, and his daughter, Fani, or Fani, whatever. And
well,
it was what it was. So I had not been in touch with this woman here or this lady here in decades at that time. So last I remember seeing her was at some function or hangout or some kind of affair back 1973 or 4, somewhere thereabouts.
Well, it says here Fani Willis is the offspring of 2 Black Panthers. Her mother, Cherie Laverne Dalton, is an FBI most wanted for robbery and murder. This is why the internet is scrubbed of Fani Willis with her mother. Here is her mother pregnant with Fani in 1971, which makes sense because
I don't recall, by the way, either one of them being part of the Black Panther Party. I do recall John Floyd being quite active in the Black Student Alliance, and there is an affiliation and exchange back and forth between Black Panther Party, Black Student Union, various ones, and Black Student Alliance, which was going on in the LA area. That was because of the activities of Ron Karenga and his US organization that was, shall we say, allegedly working with the SIS unit of the Los Angeles Police Department, and they were looked at as everybody's enemy. The Nation of Islam and their FOI were part of this group of community organizations, which included the Panther Party, Black Student Alliance, Black Student Union, the FOI, and other people in various and sundry organizations that were opposed to us, because us was sending people in to take shorthand notes of meetings we were having. And as soon as they did that, the FBI would haul everybody in. And there was this counterintelligence thing going on in the late 60s. So by the time 1969, 1970 hit, there were more people who were informants, agents, or officers of these alphabet agencies in the organizations than there were legitimate members. So people were just saying, hey, I don't have any problems with it. I have a problem with that. And what happened is Lyndon Baines Johnson was no longer the president, and a lot of black people gave up hope because Great White Daddy, friendly Great White Daddy, was no longer in the White House, and there was Tricky Dick Nixon, and he was looked at as an enemy. This was also after we started getting heavy black exploitation, Black Caesar, Superfly, Foxy Brown, and such like. It was a debilitating campaign on glorifying dysfunction, which has spread until it has become the norm now. Mm-hmm. And there's another thing, as per most of the hard movements around the world, it was led by the young intelligentsia, meaning the students, or those who had decided to get academic on things and learn a lot of stuff out of the books and try it on the ground. And what we had was a resurgence starting about 1971, 72, picked up heavy in 73, where the street gangs started reviving after they'd become essentially dead from 1965, 66 on until about 1971 or 2. There was this 5-year hiatus because people got it out of their system. And there were fathers around, and there was fatherhood, and there was manhood. And then when that started getting pushed to the side with the glorification of dysfunction with this black exploitation nonsense to generate revenues for Hollywood, which was having trouble with color TV, things started going to hell very quickly. So the students bailed on the radical movement and started saying there's another way of doing it. The radical movements became more street, but dysfunctional street, because a lot of people that had been doing penitentiary time from what was going on in the early mid-60s were getting out, and they were gravitating to organizations, and some of the black organizations that were for black betterment became obvious targets. And you got some people that were young teenagers, too young to do anything with it, who were now 18, 19, early 20s. So they had been wannabes. Now these organizations were open, and they got in and they sort of fell apart. Last point on this is this: in 50 years after the fact, 45 years after the fact, it has become trendy to label anybody who was doing anything in what was termed militancy as a Black Panther. That's not necessarily the case. And the other problem is there was no formal join up process where you said, I want to join, and sign some paperwork and you get a card. That just didn't happen. It was more or less somebody wanted to do that they got into hanging out with. And once somebody got used to you, then that party became part of. There was no initiation ceremony, anything like that.
Okay. Well, I want to go back to her father, because her father, he raised Fani Willis. It says here, and this is by way of the Times Now, it's the article, who is Fani Willis' father. He raised Willis in both California and Washington, D.C. Fani Willis followed in her father's footsteps and pursued law after tagging along with him to court on the weekends and the mornings, yada, yada, yada. Despite his own unfavorable views towards the law enforcement, Mr. Floyd encouraged Willis to join the prosecutor's office, given how it would further her goals to become a judge. As a youth, Mr. Floyd engaged in sit-ins at segregated lunch counters in Memphis, Tennessee in 1965. Following an incident where a white man spat tobacco juice on his head, he opted for a more assertive approach. In 1967, Mr. Floyd was a founding member and at one point chairman of the Black Panther political party, a faction of the Black Panthers. He renounced.
I don't know anything about that, but I do know he was very active in the Black Student Alliance, and he was in California.
Right. So it says he renounced violence and enrolled at UCLA to study law after two Panthers, Bunchy Carter and John Higgins, were shot and killed.
Huggins. Huggins.
Sorry, Huggins. John Huggins and Bunchy Carter was shot and killed in an altercation
in Campbell Hall, and I was there.
He renounced violence and enrolled at UCLA to study law after two Panthers, Bunchy Carter and John Huggins, were shot and killed in an altercation at a Black student union meeting.
That's true.
What's not true?
In other words, the type of relationship I had with him is we ran into each other most days during the week, typically during a month. Considering the closeness of the Black students at UCLA on campus at this time, and when this happened to John and Bunchy, nobody renounced violence. It was, we are people of peace who can be brave and courageous when necessary. This is a later construct about he renouncing violence to be peaceful after. That's not what the case is. That's like somebody saying that about me. I was a peaceful man, but I did not say I was going to be nonviolent like Dr. King and the peaceful, nonviolent civil rights things. He was part of a group which included yours truly, who contemporaneously and often said, we reject that. So to put that on his shoulders now, 55 years after the fact, is unrealistic, and that's a modern invention. The mother is after he and she broke up. That's why he would be raising her.
Pause for a second. So she was pregnant in 71, gave birth in 72. Because Fani Willis was born in 1972.
I remember when she was born. We all congratulated him.
The mother running with the law
was 10 years later. Personal knowledge, by the time this alleged bank robbery occurred, I had personal conversations with the father, John Floyd, about his breakup with the woman that we're are referencing or who might be her. So he was not with her at the time. They had broken up some years before that, which is why he winds up raising Fani. Now, John was always a stand-up guy. We could always count on him to when something needed to be done. We did it. And we did some things that I'm not going to confess to or mention because the statute of limitations has not run on some of them. All right. So he was there. We opened stuff up. He was part of the group that could be depended upon to do what was necessary to get what was appropriate accomplished. So by 1980, he had broken up with this woman. He was on his own. And when you start talking about this organization, that was a fallout from an organization that developed from this group that kidnapped Patty Hearst.
1971, her mother was pregnant. She gave birth in 1972. The incident that took place is in 81 and 82. They broke up by then. So, again, do we know for sure that this is her mother? No, because we don't have information. She doesn't talk about her mother. There's no other pictures except for the picture that I had displayed where that woman with Fani Willis' father and the FBI report. So this is alleged that this is her mother wanted by the FBI, but it would make sense for them to scrub all this information off the internet, considering what the daughter, Fani Willis, has been going throughout 2024.
Okay, all I can say is this: is looking at the picture that they have is somebody that is in their 50s. Now, I have not seen this woman since her early 20s. I knew her. I knew her father quite well. And what I would offer to is whoever may be involved is a pragmatic matter. He had broken up with her mother by the 1980s. I know they broke up before that because, frankly, I was trying to fix him up with the younger sister of somebody that I had dated.
Before that.
Yeah, they broke up before that. So I know when he contacted me about making the hookup, it was before that. So they had broken up based on the conversations I was having with him. Conversations, plural. At that time, he was still on the West Coast and I had relocated to Memphis. So we were talking long distance. So that's what I would say.
So in conclusion, this woman who is wanted by the FBI, her name is Cheryl Laverne Dalton, right? We don't know if this is her mother or not, but we don't know who Fani Willis' mother is. And that's the question that I'm asking. Who is Fani Willis' mother? Is it this woman? Because her date of birth does line up with the timeline of Fani Willis' birth. And it would make sense during the time of this arrest in 81 and 82, Fani Willis was already being raised by her father in California and in DC. So in conclusion, Ellie Pink, want to say anything?
You said no. We just want to know who she is and why her mother has not been being talked about, and if this is allegedly her mother, then why ain't she attacking her own mama instead of going after everybody else?
Right. And
if I might make a comment, since I don't particularly want to get sued, this woman could be her mother. There is a resemblance. However, the picture is somebody in their 50s or early 60s. The last I saw the woman, she looked much like she did in that photograph that you showed with the big afro, with her standing there with Fani's father, John Floyd, who I knew quite well. There are some stories out there about what their history is, but what I know of them, that would be a later construct. So rather than assume the risk of liability, since that might have some professional repercussions on John, who's still practicing law, I say that with a sense of caution, which is why I mentioned what I did, so that we would distance ourselves from that until there's more conclusive proof about the thing. Now, at the time this woman is alleged to have done these criminal acts, I have cause to have the opinion that John Floyd and the mother that is depicted in this picture we're looking at had broken up sometime before that. Now, John grew up like I did, and at that point in time, the police were not friends of the Black community. However, I have said often in other talks that it's a good idea for somebody who wants to be a lawyer to get an internship and a residency in the practice of law. And the best way to do that is to get with the attorney general's office somewhere, a prosecutor's office, or a public defender's office, or with a government agency who has a legal staff that gives you a lot of practice getting in and out of court. Now, that's just what you do. So that does not bespeak any particular political perspective. And there is this thing you find out that you do need when you have a government for somebody to have responsibility for representing the people and for somebody to do defense work. And if somebody is good, they are able to do both when necessary. So with that said, from my recollection, it could be the woman, but I can't say conclusively because there's about a 40-year gap in ages here.
Okay.
Now, that's all I mentioned the party with. It's just sometimes there is a realistic liability situation. Some people may be in a situation where the type of practice you're doing, the business you're doing, it becomes very onerous to be associated with certain radical organizations. Somebody may or may not have been associated with those organizations, but let them make the claim rather than somebody else. Now, I will say this about John. He was involved in the defense of Nelson Mandela on a national scale. He had been involved with a number of projects involving the United Nations. And he's a good trial lawyer. And I think he's had more than 1,000 or so trials in front of juries or judges. So he knows his way around a courtroom. Mm-hmm. Now, that said, it is what it is. And the organizations that are being put on somebody in terms of membership, is not that they don't exist. It's just when you get into the real timeline, they are morphs. In other words, if something is said that this is an organization somebody belonged to in 1982 and that organization became defunct in 1974, then there's a problem.
All right. So listen, the question is, who is Fani Willis' mother? We don't know. I'm not saying, and nobody on this platform is saying that the woman that's wanted by the FBI, Cheryl Dalton, is her mother. Is it a possibility? Anything is possible. But when you do Google Fani Willis bio or Fani Willis parents, it says, what's his name? John Floyd, Mr. Floyd. And the mother name they give is Lillian Willis. Well, Lillian should not have Willis' last name because Willis is the married name of Fani Willis, her ex-husband. So Lillian Willis is not the real name of her mother. Doesn't make sense.
In other words, you see it on the net, it's unreliable.
Exactly. So we don't know who her mother is. This information came by, an anonymous person. Is it a reliable source? Yes, but we're not going to say who that person is. And we're just having a discussion and asking the question, who is Fani Willis' mother? Is this her mother? It makes sense that, we never saw a picture, never heard anything about, well, what does her mother do for a living? Why was she raised by her father? The focus is always dad when it's talking about her parents and never mom. So I just find that odd. But if this is her mother and she's wanted by the FBI under RICO, murder, robbery, and all this stuff,
may I offer this?
Corruption doesn't probably fall too far from the tree.
May I offer this as an explanation for why that is? Her father, attorney John Floyd, testified. That was on national television. He is an international figure, so he is known. So it would be automatic that somebody who is a known figure or professional who testifies for a doctor who's in the news to be discussed. The point comes up is, who is President Donald Trump's mother? Who is Joe Biden's mother? who is Barack Obama's mother, other than that it becomes peripheral and has to do with his birth and circumstances of relations to other international and national figures. Who is Martin Luther King's mother? Do we ever talk about that? Who is Al Sharpton's mother? Do we talk about these things? See, who is my mother? Does anybody bring that up? You see, ordinarily, unless there's an independent reason to deal with a parent, you don't discuss the parent because there's no context for it. So that may be why we don't hear anything about Fani Willis's or Fani Willis's mother, because there's no context for it.
Right. But public figures, when you read their bio, Wikipedia or such, and they have the parents listed, they're going to have the parents' last name as maiden or the father's last name, not the last name of your daughter's ex-husband last name. So,
that's right. In other words, it's showing the unreliability of the information sources. But if you Google me, you won't find my mother's name. You won't find my father's name either. So it's just like that. If I Googled you, I wouldn't find your parents' name.
you would.
You might?
Yeah.
No, you would.
I would? Okay, well.
I mean, I think that hers become relevant because of if this is or maybe, or the streets say that this is her mother, and with the background that we are dealing with and the corruption that we're dealing with down here, she has her attention so much on Rico's down here, then why that same energy ain't being put towards someone that has the law still being broken.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean, it may be. That's a valid point. The only thing is why don't we hear about Letitia James's mama or Prosecutor Bragg's mama?
because they're not in the spotlight. They choose to go after the president.
Well, I know, but Bragg went after the president.
And then
James went after it.
My thing of it is because she's so, I'm going after corruption. I'm attacking, corruption. No one's above the law. And every law you're telling us that nobody is above is something that you are directly embedded with it being yourself or being Wade or being your mom or being somebody that is around your own self. So while you're telling us no one is above the law, you are committing the crimes that you're going after people, or allegedly your family is doing the same. So don't tell us about the law when you ain't even helping us, if this is allegedly your mother, helping the law.
Good point. But let's look at a public figure right now, Robert Kennedy Jr. He is the son of Robert Kennedy, who was assassinated. Robert Kennedy Sr. was the son of Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy has all kinds of allegations and a lot of history that indicates he was doing something well. He was American ambassador to England at the beginning of World War II. But there's also a lot out there about him being a gangster, running the bootleg racket in Boston, controlling the docks, and running black people off of the job markets. So doing hits and hired killings for Al Capone out of Chicago. These are all allegations against Joe Kennedy, and there's a good case to be made, which is karma. You take a whole lot of life and run a lot of criminalities, and maybe you condemn your family to getting the same kind of things done you were doing for other entities.
All right.
Look at
we don't need to look at that. No, I need to.
No, I'm just saying, look at it in that context of, do we focus on Robert Kennedy Jr. as an entity or what his grandfather may or may not have been up to?
Well, we can look at both.
Yeah, you can.
Because political gangbangers.
Political gangbangers, political gangsters. Because his privilege came from corruption. He was allotted, and I'm not saying that he is like his grandfather. However, he was allotted a lot of privilege in this society because of the gangster corruption acts of the grandfather. And I'm going to include the grandmother in there too, because you knew what your husband was doing and you helped cover it up or whatever. Just real quick, I'm going to just mention this real quick. During that time, you know, even during the Black Panther, and this is not a conversation to talk about Black Panther, I just want to make this statement because I am going to do a follow-up video. We'll do a follow-up video about Fani Willis' father, Mr. Floyd, and a Black Panther Party. So I'll just end it on this. During the Black Panther movement and even towards the end of it, when we're talking about radical Black people, they were, you know, hijacking planes and taking it to Cuba. One of the most famous of the FBI most wanted, Ashada Shakur, when she, Joanne Chisimar, when she was involved in a shootout on New Jersey Turnpike with the state troopers. And she was busted out of prison in 1979, fled to Cuba, been living there ever since. So there were a lot of Black badasses, you know, and a lot of people disagree with their ideology, with their purpose, but a lot of them are held as heroes. So again, I don't know if this is her mother. It was brought to our attention. It could be. We don't know for sure, but I think it should be discussed.
Right.
No doubt about it. The discussion's merited.
Right.
But whether or not it's the same person is a different thing. And also the fact that there might be confusion is also an issue too. And also the accusations or the assertions relative to status is something that is a new phenomenon. Everybody that did something was not a Black Panther, and there were a lot of people that did something that were Black Panthers who are not attributed to that organization.
True. All right. And with that, thank you guys for tuning in for another video clip. All right. And we'll see you soon. Bye.
Dana with the data. Dana with the data.